In 1933, America was collapsing. Banks failed, jobs vanished. 1 in 4 people was unemployed. The American dream was dying. Then one man promised a bold solution, the New Deal. Did it save the nation or change America forever? But then a new president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, steps onto the scene with a bold promise, a New Deal for the American people. He famously said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." But what was this New Deal really, and how did it pull America back from the brink? Let's dive in. The Great Depression wasn't just a minor blip. It was a full-blown economic catastrophe that started with the stock market crash of 1929. The Roaring '20s came to a screeching halt. People who had invested their life savings saw it all vanish overnight. This wasn't just a problem for Wall Street, it created a domino effect. When people lost money, they stopped spending. When people stopped spending, businesses couldn't sell their products. When businesses couldn't sell, they laid off workers. And when workers lost their jobs, they had even less money to spend. It was a vicious downward spiral. Before FDR, the government's approach was mostly hands-off. The prevailing idea was that the economy would eventually correct itself. But as the crisis deepened, it became clear that eventually might be too late for millions of suffering Americans. People were lining up for bread, living in shanty towns they called Hoovervilles out of frustration with President Hoover's response. The country was desperate for a new approach, for someone to do something, anything to stop the bleeding. Enter Franklin Delano Roosevelt. When he took office, he didn't waste any time. He launched the New Deal, a massive series of programs, reforms, and regulations that would completely transform the role of the American government. The New Deal wasn't a single plan, but a collection of initiatives aimed at tackling the crisis from every angle. You can think of it in terms of the 3 R's: relief, recovery, and reform. First up, relief. This was all about immediate, direct help for the unemployed and poor. People were starving, and they needed help right now. One of the first things FDR did was declare a bank holiday, closing all the nation's banks for a few days. This sounds scary, but it was genius. It stopped the panic and the endless withdrawals that were killing the banking system. Congress then passed the Emergency Banking Act, which allowed sound banks to reopen under government supervision. In his first fireside chat on the radio, FDR calmly explained the plan to the American people, not as a president talking down to them, but as a friend. It worked. When the banks reopened, people actually started putting their money back in. Trust was being restored. To provide direct relief, programs like the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, or FERA, were created. It gave billions of dollars to states to fund soup kitchens and help the unemployed. But FDR believed in a work relief system. He thought it was better for people's morale and dignity to work for their paychecks rather than just receive a handout. This led to the creation of some of the most famous New Deal agencies. Let's talk about the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. This was one of the most popular programs. It put millions of young, unemployed men to work on environmental projects. They planted billions of trees, built trails in national parks, fought forest fires, and constructed lodges and shelters. If you've ever hiked in a national park in the U.S., you've probably seen the work of the CCC. They were paid about $30 a month, and most of it was sent directly home to their families. It was a win-win. Young men got jobs, families got support, and the country's natural resources were improved for generations to come. Next, let's look at recovery. This was about getting the economy back on its feet. The goal was to stimulate demand and get industries and agriculture moving again. The Agricultural Adjustment Act, or AAA, aimed to solve the problem of overproduction on farms, which was driving crop prices so low that farmers were going bankrupt. The government actually paid farmers to produce less, to reduce the supply and drive prices back up to a sustainable level. It was controversial for sure, especially when people were hungry, but it did help stabilize the agricultural sector. For industry, there was the National Recovery Administration, the NRA. It set codes for fair competition, including minimum wages and maximum hours. This was an attempt to stop the cutthroat competition that was driving wages down and hurting businesses. The NRA symbol, the Blue Eagle, was displayed by businesses that complied, with the slogan, "We do our part." While the Supreme Court later struck down the NRA, it set important precedents for labor standards. Perhaps the most ambitious recovery project was the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. The Tennessee Valley was one of the poorest regions in the country, plagued by flooding and with very little electricity. The TVA was a massive federal project that built a series of dams to control floods, generate cheap hydroelectric power, and modernize the entire region. It brought electricity to rural homes that had never had it before, created jobs, and completely transformed the economy of a 7-state area. The TVA still exists today, a testament to the New Deal's long-term vision. Finally, we have the third R, reform. This was arguably the most important and lasting part of the New Deal. The goal was to fix the underlying problems in the financial system to prevent a future depression from ever being this bad again. These are reforms that are still a fundamental part of American life today. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, was created. You've probably seen that FDIC sticker at your bank. It insures your bank deposits, so if your bank fails, you don't lose your life savings. This single reform was crucial in restoring public confidence in the banking system. It ended the bank runs for good. Another key reform was the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. Its job was to regulate the stock market and prevent the kind of fraud and risky speculation that had led to the 1929 crash. The SEC requires companies to be transparent about their finances so investors can make informed decisions. It's the reason we have rules against things like insider trading. And then there's the big one, maybe the most significant piece of legislation from the whole New Deal era, the Social Security Act of 1935. For the first time, the federal government created a social safety net. It provided unemployment insurance for those who lost their jobs, aid for dependent children and people with disabilities, and most famously, a national system of retirement pensions for older Americans. Before Social Security, growing old often meant growing poor. The program fundamentally changed what it meant to retire in America, creating a foundation of economic security for generations. Now, was the New Deal perfect? Absolutely not. It had plenty of critics. Some on the left argued it didn't go far enough to help the poor and redistribute wealth. Some on the right claimed it was a dangerous expansion of government power and a step towards socialism. The Supreme Court even declared several of its key programs unconstitutional. And it didn't single-handedly end the Great Depression. Many historians argue that it was the massive government spending for World War II that finally pulled the U.S. economy completely out of the slump. But here's what the New Deal did do. It stopped the free fall. It provided a crucial lifeline to millions of desperate Americans. It gave them jobs, food, and most importantly, hope. It rebuilt and modernized the country's infrastructure, leaving a physical legacy we can still see today in bridges, dams, parks, and post offices. And most profoundly, it redefined the relationship between the American people and their government. It established the principle that the government has a responsibility to care for the welfare of its citizens and to step in to manage the economy in times of crisis. The debates we have today about the size of government, social safety nets, and economic regulation, all of these trace their roots back to the New Deal. So did FDR save the economy? He saved it from a total collapse. He put a floor under the economy and started the long, difficult climb back up. He didn't fix everything overnight, but he changed the rules of the game. The New Deal wasn't just a set of programs. It was a fundamental shift in thinking that continues to shape the United States to this day. It's a powerful story of how, in a moment of deep crisis, a nation chose to rebuild itself.